Do you have a quilt top to finish? Maybe this is your first quilt top and you're unsure what to do next. Or maybe you started a while ago and it's sitting in the bag in the back of your closet. Or maybe you found one at a garage sale, or you found one in your grandmother's attic. Well, you are in the right place. Today's quilting tutorial is all about getting that top quilted and bound. And not only is there a free pattern download, there is a brand new beginner guide with links to all sorts of free resources on my website. So stick with me and I'll show you how to do it. Hi, I'm Karen Brown of Just Get It Done Quilts. I give you tips, tricks, and strategies to help you make the quilt that you want to make. And if you like what you see, please click that subscribe button. This video is for anyone that needs to finish a quilt. It's also video 2 in my Quick and Slick Scrapbuster series. In video number 1, we made the quilt top, which is also called a flimsy. This video is all about the easiest ways to get your quilt finished. And in part 3, we will cover different ways to modify the pattern. Honestly, the transition from making the quilt top to actually quilting the top is the place where most quilters stumble. And for good reason, the cost. This is where you need to invest in a backing and a batting. The skill set. You need a whole new set of skills to finish a quilt. Space. Making a quilt sandwich takes up a lot of real estate, which a lot of us don't have. And it's ugly now, with all the jagged edges and the fraying fibers. It's not that cozy, and it's pretty darn easy to fall out of love with it. It may all feel overwhelming, and I hate to say it, it may get a little bit worse before it gets better. But I promise you, so much is forgiven once you get the binding on. So come along with me and we'll get it done together. We are going to start with an easy step, making your label. You might think that you're just a beginner, therefore your quilt is not worthy of a label, but you are, and it is too. And the easiest way to make a label is taking a 6-inch square of light fabric and folding it in half on the diagonal. Then with a laundry marker or a micron pen, write your name and the date. If you have named your quilt, you can add that. You can add the recipient's name, anything that you think that works. Another way to do it is by using these specially prepared fabric sheets. You then prepare a Word document on your computer and then print them on your inkjet printer and prepare them the same way. Now, if you would like a link to this template or learn about other ways to make quilt labels, you'll find them in the beginner guide. You might be thinking that you're going to wait until the quilt top is finished. Way to make a label, but doing it now does double duty. It gives your quilt purpose by thinking of where your quilt will be used. And when you finally get the binding on, you just may not have the energy. So trust me on this one. Do it now. We call the 3 layers of backing, batting, and a quilt top a quilt sandwich. And no matter if this is your first quilt, your 10th, or your 100th, this step is fiddly and demands space and time. If your sewing space is small, that might mean moving to the kitchen table or a ping pong table in a neighbor's home, a board table at your office, or pushing together multiple tables at a community center, or a work table at a local quilt shop. So you might need to arrange or book this space ahead of time. And while you're considering your options, you need to do the following. What goes on the back of a quilt? Some quilters think this is the perfect place to put all your ugly fabric and scraps. Others think the back should be just as beautiful as the front. I have gone into all the different types of backing in another video, which you will find in the guide. But for this one, we're going to keep it simple and use what you have. If you're quilting on a domestic sewing machine, it needs to be 2 inches larger on all sides than your quilt top. So it needs to be at least 4 inches taller and 4 inches wider than your flimsy. First, we want to check what's in your stash. A printed fabric on the back is more beginner friendly than a solid fabric, as it helps hide your stitches. If your fabric is just a little bit short, like mine is for this baby quilt, don't worry. It's easy to add another width of fabric piece. Just square up the edges and sew them together. You can use 1/4 of an inch or a 1/2 inch seam, your choice. And then press the seam towards the bottom of the quilt. For my cuddle quilt, the piece of fabric I found is fine lengthwise, but it's too narrow. I need to add some fabric to the side, but I don't want to cut a long narrow strip from another piece of fabric. So I'm using this remnant from my stash instead. I cut the width of fabric into 3 smaller pieces parallel to the selvages. And then I sew them together to make one long strip. Then I trim the selvage from my backing and sew my extra strip on. And now it's big enough. Whatever fabric you choose, just be sure it's soft to the touch and quilt friendly. Now what about using something stretchy like a fleece or a minky? You can use it, but if this is your first quilt, managing the stretch while you're quilting can be tricky. Save that challenge for a future quilt. Batting is this flattened mix of fibers. In my video about batting, I have gone into all sorts of details on cost, warmth, breathability, and more. But since this might be your first quilt, just stick to the least expensive that you can find, which is likely to be a polycotton or polyester. Batting can be purchased by the roll or by the bag, and just remember we're looking for flat batting, not the big bushy kind. And similar to the back, we need a piece 4 inches taller and 4 inches wider than the quilt back. Hopefully you have found a nice big surface to make your quilt sandwich on. First, give your top and back a good press. Next, we need a way to keep these layers together while we quilt it. And there are at least 6 different ways to do it, which I showed you in this video here, which is in the guide. But today we're going to be using the fastest and simplest by using spray glue. I'm using this can of 505 glue that I purchased from my local quilt store. You can also buy it online or at other craft stores. Before you spray, lay out your back, then your batting, and your quilt top on top of each other to be sure you have the right orientation and the proper size. Then take your layers to a well-ventilated spot. I'm using this fence outside my studio, and I'm using clips to secure it. I start with the back, wrong side up, and give it a good all-over spray. And I repeat this with the batting.
Place the backing on your table with the glued side up. Then place the batting with the glue side facing down over the back. Don't worry if the batting or the backing sticks to itself. Just gently pull it apart and smooth it down.
Next, spray baste the wrong side of your top. Lay this glue side down on top of the batting. Now, working from one side or from the middle, smooth the top out towards the sides so it lies flat. Remove any wrinkles or folds. If necessary, lift a section of the top and lay it down again. There's no shame if this takes a couple of tries. Honestly, I have had times where I've had to remove the whole top and start all over. And when you have finished with the top, flip the quilt sandwich over and repeat the process on your backing. Again, if necessary, lift the fabric and lay it down again. Now check your top. Is it still smooth? You might need to smooth out some wrinkles. Then check the back again. At this moment, you can trim off any excess batting or backing. Then take your iron and give your sandwich a good all-over press. I find this helps set the glue and stops the sandwich from separating.
The bigger the quilt top, the longer this step will take. Just be patient and breathe as all this effort pays off in the end.
Quilting is different than piecing, so we need to set up our sewing machine slightly different. Start, as always, with a good clean. It is okay to use the same 50 weight thread that you use for piecing, but this time you want to give color more of a consideration. Since we have a whole range of colors in our quilt top, this means test driving a number of different shades to see which one works best. Don't just look at the spool. Draw a thread out so it covers a range of blocks and see which works best. And it might surprise you what one does. You also need to consider your bobbin color, as you want that one to blend in with your backing. And use a larger quilting needle, like a 90. You want to lengthen your stitch? Do a couple of test pieces at first, just to see which one you like the best. Somewhere between a 3 and a 4. And lastly, there are 2 tools that will make this stage a lot easier. One is these quilting gloves. You can grab official quilting gloves or just grab some work gloves with tacky fingers from the dollar store. They help you manage the weight and the bulk. The second tool is a walking foot. These often are brand specific. This foot helps you feed all 3 layers of the quilt through your machine evenly. Regular feet can cause a wave to flow down your quilt as the different layers move at different rates, and that leads to ridges and creases. If you don't have a walking foot, see if you can reduce the pressure on your presser foot. There are 2 quilting patterns that are great for beginners. The first one is wavy lines. Start in the middle of one side and quilt and shift the quilt from side to side as you sew to the other side. When you reach the end, cut your thread and move the quilt back to the right of your first row of stitching.
Continue with the wavy lines until you reach the right side of the quilt. Rotate the quilt and continue making wavy lines starting from the center outward.
You can choose how far apart you want your stitching to be. It can be 1 inch, 2 inches, 3 inches. Just remember, you can always go back and make your stitching denser, but you can't do the reverse. And the second pattern is a gentle wave. Similar to the first, you start in the middle of one side and just make a big wave to the other side. Then return to the beginning and sew the next row to the right.
Similar to the first method, we are adding waves to the right, but this time they will become shorter and shorter. Then flip the quilt around and repeat. Don't worry about perfect spacing, it just adds to the wave effect.
Here are some points to remember. Sit tall. We have a tendency to hunch over, and all that puts extra effort on our shoulders and our necks. And you'll definitely feel it the next day. So be sure to take breaks and readjust yourself. Don't push your fabric through your sewing machine. Let your sewing machine do the work. Pushing your fabric leads to creases and wrinkles. Take your time. You can feel that the finish line is close and you just want to get it done, but keep it slow. You'll want to stop every foot or so and adjust the sandwich to be sure that it's not caught on anything and flows through evenly. Put on some good music, an audiobook, or even one of my podcasts. And lastly, do not stress about perfection. I know it can be super hard at this point. A half-made quilt with the batting hanging out is pretty darn ugly. You're working up close so you can see any mistakes and misalignments. But hang in there, because we are almost done. Now, if you would prefer, there are other beginner motifs and styles that you can try. And I have 10 fast and easy ones in this video here. Most quilts will go on a bed, so we end up squaring up the sides. But having them perfectly square is often more of a negotiation as you decide what to cut off and what to save. Now, having a long ruler like this is great for squaring up, but if you don't have one, take advantage of some straight lines in your home, like the edge of a table, the edge of a counter. I have used floor planks and tiles. We will trim twice. The first trim is just a rough cut to remove all the extra backing and batting. So measure a 1/2 inch to 3/4 from the edge and cut around the perimeter. The second cut is where we decide the binding will be. Now look at the edge. We are looking for a perpendicular line that trims all the exposed batting. Now the sides of our quilt top can be pretty darn jagged. And luckily, since we are working with just squares and rectangles, we don't have to worry about trimming off any points. We just need to find the narrowest piece and trim. Now rotate your quilt 90 degrees. Align your cut edge with the long straight edge you have, or a line on your cutting mat, and trim square to your first cut. Then repeat these 2 steps with the other sides. Lastly, pin or clip your label from step 1 on the back. Normally it goes in the bottom right corner, but that's not a rule. Okay, the penultimate step here, the binding. This is a strip of fabric that protects the edges of your quilt. There are multiple options when choosing your binding fabric. A darker fabric will give your quilt a frame, similar to how a picture frame works. For the quick and slick baby-size quilt, you'll need 4 width of fabric strips, 2.5 inches wide. For the cuddle quilt, you'll need 6. If your top is another size, you can download this free binding chart from Geeky Bobbin that will tell you how many strips to cut. You can also buy pre-made binding, like these beautiful ones from Bessie Pearl. Remove the selvages. To make one long binding strip, place the end of one binding strip right side up along a horizontal line. Place the end of a second binding strip right side down vertically. Mark a line between these 2 points and pin in place. Now this step will be a whole lot easier if you make yourself a 3-in-1 binding tool. You can cut one from stiff mylar or cardboard, and you can find the link to the template in the beginner guide. Take the bottom end of the second strip and place it right side up along the horizontal. Take the third strip and place the end right side down along the vertical. Mark between the points and pin.
Then repeat with the remaining strips.
And then we sew along these marked lines. Trim the seams at approximately 1/4 inch. Press the whole strip flat by starting at one end and pressing the seams open. Roll the strip up as you move along the whole length. There are several ways to put the binding on, and I have a whole series about them on my channel, and the links are in the guide. Today we are using the Easy Machine version. If you have a walking foot, you're going to use it here. Hopefully you still have your quilting needle in your machine.
And I like to use a slightly bigger stitch of 2.5 here.
Put a quilting glove on your left hand, and that will help you manage the bulk and the weight of the quilt. The bobbin thread should match the back as close as possible, and the top thread can either match your binding or contrast with it, your choice. With the back of the quilt facing up and the bottom edge of the quilt on the right, find the midpoint. Lay the binding strip along the edge, wrong side up. Clip to hold it in place. Fold the top corner down along the edge. Clip this in place. Start sewing a 1/4 inch seam with 3 to 5 stitches. Then pause and fold the length of the binding strip along the edge. Continue to sew the seam to the end, stopping a 1/4 inch before the corner. Backstitch and cut your thread. Many quilters stress about binding corners and how they are not sharp. Your 3-in-1 tool is going to solve that problem. Lay the tool along the edge with the point in the corner.
Fold your binding strip over the tool, making this 45-degree fold.
Now move your 3-in-1 tool on top of this fold. Fold the fabric back over the tool so that the edge runs along the side. Now remove the tool. Use a couple of clips to hold everything in place. Rotate the quilt 90 degrees. Sew a 1/4 inch seam until you reach the next corner and repeat. Be sure to stop often and readjust yourself, the quilt and the binding strip. When you round the last corner and when you are close to where you began, trim the binding strip like this, approximately 1 inch from the start and on a 45-degree downward cut. I also like to trim 1/8 inch from the last ends of the strip. Finish the seam. Tuck the tail into the pocket of the binding. Now we flip the quilt, so now we have the right side up. Fold the binding up and over the edge and clip in place. We will be stitching here, where the binding edge extends past the previous seam. I use the inner edge of the left side of my walking foot as a guide, which is about 1/16 of an inch, and that means my stitches will show on the back.
I like to start sewing about 6 inches from where the binding overlaps.
And when you approach the corner, you want to fold the binding up from the bottom first and then from the side and secure with a clip. As you get closer to the corner, you may replace the clip with the tip of a stiletto.
Turn the quilt and repeat. Go.
This step is not to be rushed as you stop to adjust the quilt, roll over the binding of the next section. And when you have reached where the binding has joined together, use a couple of extra clips to ensure it rolls over evenly. One last thread inspection of the whole quilt, and then you're done. Congratulations, you've just made your first quilt. From choosing the fabrics to sewing that last little bit of binding, you have learned all the basics. Remember, your first quilt does not need to be perfect. Every quilt teaches you something, and every quilt has a story stitched into the fabric. There is a free pattern for the quick and slick quilt pattern on my website, plus a free beginner guide to all sorts of free resources, both in downloads and videos. And you can find that link in the notes below. And don't forget, there will be a part 3 in this series for all different ways you can modify the layout. If you found this series helpful, hit like, subscribe, and share your quilt with me. I love to cheer you on. Take care, and I'll see you next time.